Hello again, this is Stephen Dupree from nowenergetics.com. Going through another video on some of the Ewan method basics. We've gone through a few other articles here in the left-hand side of the website. Today we're going to go over Ewan method, where do I start? So this is kind of, once we get through energetic testing, what is strong and weak energy, and sort of dipping our toe into feeling for weaknesses and being able to get started. There's kind of a broader area to go through to clear yourself to do this work efficiently. And so I've sort of collected all these different things that might be worth clearing up front once you're new in the method, and to get kind of going at a good pace. You know, when I first learned this method, there wasn't a lot of support for, you know, kind of where do I go next. So I kind of wrote this article, where do I start? Should be where do I go next? You know, I kind of interested at where do I go next. So so a lot of things, you know, kind of tie into the book that Dr. Ewan wrote, Delete Stress and Pain. And so you go on, you kind of start there, you get the book, and you get some sense of, you know, what it means to feel for strong and weak energy through some of the articles, some of the videos that I put out that talk about the differences with Ewan method and other methodologies. It's a very simple but powerful method, and it has a very unique measuring tool of strong and weak that's very universal, very much a Swiss Army knife, and can be used with any modality, which is a great thing. And you get answers quickly. And, you know, sometimes we find that people kind of like to get their answers in a slower way, because that's how you learn. You know, you learn a subject or something like that, you tend to struggle with it or whatever. Well, we kind of bypass all that way of thinking. You know, we kind of do the experience first, learn second. So you want to be able to move very, very fast with energetic testing. And once you get the hang of that, then you go directly to, you know, clearing the kind of things that will open your insight more and more. You want that window to be wider and wider and clearer, so that your insights are more clear, they're faster, and get you to accurate answers very, very, very fast, whether it be for yourself or for other people. So that's very important, to keep progressing in the method, and don't have any particular areas that slow you down. So this is where I wrote this article. It's kind of a long article, but it has a lot of information in it to get yourself clear, things that maybe you'd have to have sessions to clear yourself, or someone else would have to clear. Because if you have a perception block, or if you have some issue, you may not be new enough, or you may not be far enough in the method to know that you have that weakness. It may be a blind spot for you, that kind of thing. So I kind of list the top issues that I see with new folks in terms of what they need to clear. And so this is kind of where this article goes here. So as I said, there are two other articles here that talk about, you know, testing strong and weak. There are also videos on the channel for each of these, and you can definitely get started with it. And I would say have some fun with it, because I think people are too serious. The energy work world is way too serious. They take themselves way too seriously. And I think that's why they don't get the best results sometimes. They're all worried about things. So let's have a little more fun with this, and realize that we can do things very, very quickly, and not be scared of things that are quick. So that's a block for a lot of people. Speed is a block for a lot of people. One of the articles on my website, one of the first articles on my website is the fear of speed. You know, so I think I have it here somewhere. Let's get to the top of the website here. The slowness. So this is actually a very short article, but a lot of what blocks people from learning this method is they're used to slowness in other energetic modalities. So you want to be as fast as you possibly can, and you want to embrace speed in all cases. You don't want to be slow about any of this. So that's very important. So let's just switch back to the article now. A little bit of a tangent. So I have these sections kind of broken out. You want to look at your neutrality first. Neutrality is always an area that we work on. whether you're strengthening something, if you find some energetic weakness or something, you eventually find your way around to a neutrality, because you're always trying to even out energy. Even strengthening in the Ewan method sense is really about evening out energy. You're taking something weak and you're making it strong. Well, what does that mean? Well, it's strong like the other things that are already strong, like your story, like my shoulder hurts. Well, if that's strong and you find a weakness that has to do with your right foot and you strengthen your right foot, then you're really just making it even with your shoulder that was already strong, even though you thought your shoulder was the issue, right? So it's all about evenness. Neutrality is about evenness. And you want as many experiences and thoughts and situations to have equal energy. That way you have the most choices, right? People think they have a lot of choices. If you're stuck on one side of an energetic weakness, you have no choices. You're stuck there, right? You have one manifestation. That's not neutral. That's not neutrality, right? You want to have all choices equal energy. And then which one's going to manifest? We really don't know. They're all the same energy, right? At that point. So that's what we want. So part of the strengthening that we use in Ewan method, and we delete effects of things and karmas and things like that. It's all to get our energy more even and more neutral. So one of the other things too that we talk about with neutrality, it's none of the non-things. It's not non-attachment, not judgment, non-duality. It really is none of those things. It's, if anything, neutrality is sometimes very much misunderstood. So when we talk about evenness of energy, we're not talking about, we're talking about every single experience and thought having the same energy. Even the negative stuff, you want to be neutral to all possibilities. And the Buddhists talk about the middle way. Well, neutrality is not looking at energy in that the middle way is better than the extremes, right? So when we talk about the middle way, it's like, well, there's something wrong with the extremes then. No, neutrality means always, all space ways, not the middle way, not avoid the extremes. You want all the energy across from one side to the other and the middle, and all points in the middle to be the same energy. So it's not the middle way, it's always being the same energy. So that's very important. And that's what we do with neutrality, and that's what we do with Ewan method. That's different. So we talk about neutrality here. We want to get ourselves neutral. So there's a list of elements here that you don't really have to read through them too much. You know, as you know, in this method, there's already energy behind every single one of these bullet points here. So you can just read down through this. You can apply the entire page at once. Just say apply, or if you want to read through it further. But these are the elements that I've put together over time that block some folks from, say, progressing with the method as quickly as they could. So as an example, strengthen knowing. Let's say if you knew the truth or something like that, if you knew a true answer, some people very, very weakened by the truth. They're very weakened by knowing. They're weakened by not knowing. You know, so there's all these issues with knowing. So you want to be neutral. If you know it, it's fine. You don't know it, it's fine. So those are all important neutralities. And most of these are getting yourself neutral to all these concepts so that you can have better insights. Same thing with anticipation. Let's go to the second one. Positive outcome, negative outcome, doesn't matter. You want to be neutral either way. Most people are already neutral to the worst outcome. They don't think they are, but they're neutral to that outcome. That's where all their energy is, and that's what manifests. So the worst case scenario, believe me, you already got that covered. You got that covered in spades, as they say. So it's usually the positive outcome or anything in the middle, even like a little better for some people would be a real weakness for people, right? They kind of like all their energies on one side. So there's a case of an extreme, but when we bring it to neutrality, when we strengthen, when we find a weakness, we're really neutralizing all the different events and experiences along that area from the one extreme to the other, and also the middle, right? So we want all the energy even there, and then we can, there's a possibility of a different outcome, right? That's what we want. We're not guaranteed, but we even out the energy, you have more possibility of different outcome. So there's another bunch of links here, anticipation, hesitation. People very often hesitate. And this whole article goes up over the fact that they're anticipating or they're waiting for a certain rule or condition or something to happen. And that often blocks improvement as well. So you want to strengthen the experience here. We talk about that. Again, I'm just going to go through these fairly quickly. We have a whole article and a video on clearing perception blocks, 16 different perception blocks. Of course, with this method, we can just shortcut all of that, and we can just say, well, whatever's on the 16 common blocks, we can just clear the whole document page. It doesn't matter if it's written in a language that we don't even understand. We can just clear it. We can take that field and we can apply it to ourselves and clear it. So we can do that. And some of the other ones that I've worked on over time with clients and things that Dr. Ewan has brought up, there's a sort of a list of other related aspects that block people from actually noticing a shift that's already taken place. One of the ones that's very common is the aspirin effect, the idea that you strengthen something, someone's good for 5 minutes and it wears off. There's also sort of weaknesses to time that can happen too, but this is more kind of the opposite of time weakness. Time weakness is that, I wait for 3 weeks till it gets better. Here, it's good for 3 weeks, then it wears off. So it's just the opposite effect. But you can imagine, you sort of you have a headache, you take an aspirin in the old days, and it would wear off at some point. So a lot of folks have an aspirin effect. They don't let something last. There's something, or they need to swallow something to get better. So that's a weakness too. The idea of repetition to get better, treatment, number 2. You want to be neutral to repeating and not repeating. A lot of times the weakness is repeating. If they don't repeat it, there's a weakness. So they have to keep repeating. So that's what treatment is a lot of times. The T word is about repetition, doing it enough times, which means you have to wait a long time to get better. If you have to repeat something 20 times and it's once a week, you're not going to get better immediately. So that's a huge block for a lot of people, conventional block. People are afraid that things disappear, number 3. So that's a big block for a lot of people. And there's many different ways you can couch disappear, go away, leave. There's all different ways to talk about things that go away, things that you lose. And you want to be neutral to all of those particular words and their opposites. Very, very important. And when we say neutral and we say neutralizing, we don't want, in the conventional sense, neutralizing is kind of like getting rid of things. In our sense of neutrality, neutralizing is really just making all the energy even between both extremes of, let's say, disappear and not disappear and anything in between. So any kind of fade effect in between where you kind of still see something or something's still there, versus completely disappearing versus completely staying with you forever. That's the other extreme, right? So we want all those energetic points even. That's what neutrality is, right? We don't want to have any sentiments or remorse. We're going to clear the sentiments effect and the remorse effect. You want to be neutral to losing anything, because your unconscious self doesn't know the difference between that concept of losing $1 and losing your house or losing a person. So you have to be neutral to losing. It's just, that's how it is. So that's a very, very, very deep one for a lot of folks, but you need to be neutral to that, the idea of that. You also want to be very complete about your deletion. You don't want to hold on to a breadcrumb. So there's a lot of folks that when we delete big things like karmas or cumulative effects, the energy, the weight of the cumulative effect of something that's lasted a long time, or things you got from your ancestors or the collective humanity, things like that. You want to be able to delete those things without thinking you need to hold on to it somewhere, to have a little piece of it to go back to. So a lot of folks won't allow for a complete deletion with no sentiments. You also want to be number 6, you want to be very, very fast with all of this. And there's an article on the main website, Are You Addicted to Slowness? So you want to go very, very quickly. You don't want to struggle. There's no need to struggle to get better. The notion that you have to suffer to get better is an imprint. And if we have that imprint in our energy, we want to delete that right away so we can get better on the spot. Some people have that perception block. They need to suffer before they get better, or they need to suffer more than someone else does before they get better. So kind of the martyr experience, right? And also a lot of people are weak to testing. So as you learn the method, you'll work with clients. Let's say that you've gone far enough and you've learned things, you're doing well. You may find a client that is very weak to testing. So as you test them, their energy will go weak. So they may have issues in their life. They may have karmas, school experiences, and so on related to testing that don't allow them to retain or to give you a good answer, or to shift and perceive the shifts that have taken place. The other one is I think this is the self-sabotage pentagon. You need to be ready, willing, able, deserving, committed to getting better, to shift without any sentiments and regrets, self-sabotage and that type of thing. So that's a real big block for a lot of people. They need to be healed by someone. So there's another article here, The Healer Belief. It's a great article. I think it's on the Now Energetic site. So these are all blocks, right? So you could have had your energy shifted, or in many cases, your energy won't shift because you can't shift yourself. You need to be healed by somebody else, right? And also, okay, so number 10, accept, acknowledge, recognize. So we can get rid of our old story real quick. And we want it with no effort, right? It doesn't take effort. There's nothing that requires effort here. Okay. So that's the first beginnings here to get neutral to all these things. And then let's go find the weakness. So you have to think of something that's bothering you, or maybe it's a pain that you have, or some stress or something like that. And we want to just find the weakest thing. And we call it the primary weakness, but people always think of primary as being the only one. And more than likely, you're going to find 5 or 6 weaknesses. So you have to follow the thread, right? You'll get the biggest one first, then you go to the next, then you go to the next. And that's where you get the most improvement. You don't want to work on the smallest things first. So you need to use numerical profiling in a lot of cases to figure out which thing is bigger. And you want to go in the direction of solving the things that affect your energy the most and removing those effects, and then go in order from the largest to the smallest. So this whole section talks about finding the weakness. It's kind of like the energetic testing article. What do? Keep things simple. State the problem in 1 or 2 words, like stress. Energetically check it. And most of the time it's going to be strong, because you've already, you usually have a story, and the story is already strong. So if you still have an issue, your story is probably not what's weak. And then you can, once you realize that that's not what it is, throw that story away, right? If it came up strong, if you test stress or shoulder or whatever, and it comes up strong, you want to go to the next thing. So you want to throw away that story. So where do you start? Well, you look at opposing opposites. Here are 4 or 5 of the opposing opposites that you can often look at. Physical, non-physical, inside, outside of you, body, mind, spirit. Go in the right direction. If it's outside you, it's some spiritual experience from your ancestor that they experienced 3,000 times 500 years ago. You're not even talking about anything physically, even if your arm hurts, right? So you got to be aware of these kind of things that are not coming from you, and not coming from you even in this lifetime, so we can have these kind of effects. And how do we know that that's what it is? Well, when you strengthen it, you get an immediate result, right? There's no other better proof. So help yourself and help others to move on from their old story as quickly as possible. So be aware of that. Whatever you thought about, whatever you think it is, If it has no effect, that's not what it is. So move on. And then when you go to these opposing opposites and you piece together a story, it's non-physical, it's outside, it's spiritual experience from an ancestor 200 years ago. Restate what you know. So that's a very important thing, is to know where you're at. You went down and followed the weakness. Now you're piecing together a story, but it's the real story because you're following the weakness. You're finding the real story, and you've already thrown out your other story, which was your stress or your shoulder or whatever, whatever it could be. You've already gone down and tossed that story away. So don't reach back for it. It's very important. And the restating is basically just saying, where's my new starting point? That's really important. And it's important to get out of our thinking. When we're feeling for a weakness, when we're throwing out the story, we're not thinking to throw out the story. We're feeling to throw out the story. We're using our insight. We're testing for strong or weak. If it's not weak, we move on. If it's strong, we move on. And then, of course, as you go down the path of the story, the story of outside you, ancestor, whatever story you're coming up with, you want to be neutral to the outcome. So you want to strengthen it without any anticipation, expectation of outcome. You just follow the weakness and you're going to strengthen it. And what happens is you make more energetic points even, possibly trillions of points that were even, that weren't even before. Maybe you only had 5 points that were strong. And now you have trillions of points. So what could happen in the next moment? I don't know. That's the neutrality of the outcome. You strengthened a trillion things. Let's see what happens. And of course, the next question is, are you noticing a shift? What are you noticing now? Same or different? After you strengthen all these things, deleted the cumulative effects or karma, whatever, is it the same or different? Very simple. And if it's the same, let's say you're working with a client, you want to figure out the blocks for them to noticing the shift, because if you test it and it's strong, that means you've shifted something, the person's not perceiving it. So there's a whole article, 16 common perception blocks, that is in a different video, but most of the time people are not perceiving changes, even though they have taken place, even though these things are strong, even though you've neutralized a trillion points of things, made them even energy, they still don't perceive the change because they have some perception block. So the perception article goes through that. A lot of times, all you have to do is think of the word perception in your mind. If it goes weak, then the person has a perception block. So separate article for that. And there's many different ways, many different things that can block perception. There's the 16 common ones in the perception blocks article. There's all these other ones that are common. The Pentagon effect is probably the oldest and kind of most all-encompassing. Those 5 or 6 are pretty common. Ancestors, descendants, personality, spirit attachments, collective. Collective could be anything. Collective, cultural, collective, male, collective, anything. Different types of karma. Something could be blocking it, could be a coping mechanism, what we call the coping. I think we call it something different now, but it's that hexagon of suppress, deny, lie, shut down, forget, numbing. And sometimes people won't shift because they're concerned about how they would appear to other people. Let's say you have a whole family with the same problem and you got better first. That may be a real problem for somebody, right? They may block that just because they don't want to be the first one. They're ashamed of being the first one, let's say. It could be something like that. And you don't have to make up a story. You're checking their energy. You're not trying to create some kind of false story for them. You're creating the real story because you're checking the energy, and that's what goes weak. They're afraid to improve first. That goes weak, as an example. In your insight, you would come up with something like that. And here's a few others here about having answers, not having answers, of having something, having nothing. So there's a lot of issues around people getting rid of all of their symptoms. In other words, your symptom goes to 0 and it bothers you for things to go to 0, then you're going to have a problem. You're not going to shift as easily because you have a poverty-stricken mentality. Things go to 0, it bothers you. Bank account goes to 0, anything goes to 0 bothers you. Gas tank goes to 0, all kinds of things. And the same thing in the other direction, 100% improvement. This is one of the perception blocks. It's called a range weakness. It's like getting a grade on a test, getting 100%. Well, some people have no notion of being 100 of anything, 100% of anything, improvement or anything else. So that could be a huge block, perception block for somebody. So remember, you can improve, you can be 100%, you can be infinite potential, you can be 1,000% improvement in 1 second. So we want to acknowledge that. So I guess that's the basic part of this article, is to go through kind of the clearinghouse of, once you know how to feel for a weakness, just kind of go through this list of things that you can clear and make yourself neutral to these things so you can go on to the next step in the process of improving your skills, improving your intuition, improving your insight, and generally progressing with your own method. So I think I'll leave it at there for now, and we'll see you in the next video.